Hi, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I am so thrilled to have you here today. And today we are going to talk about boundaries. We're going to talk about setting and establishing boundaries. I don't know about you, but for myself, I don't know. I genuinely, obviously, like, no one is happy to break up, but and I guess it doesn't happen very often. Some people, it's, like you just get into one or two relationships and that is the relationship of your life. But either ways, it's always so exciting when you meet someone and you're like, oh my God, I am meeting someone new. I am getting to know them. I am learning about them and they are learning about me as well. That also applies in terms of a work situation. Could be meeting some new friends and you're like, oh my God, this is so thrilling. This is so exciting. I am loving this. However, as much as I am loving this, I know that at some point I have to set some boundaries and I have to set an expectation of how I expect the relationship to go. And sometimes it's not very pleasant, but that is one of the things that you have to do. And so today I am so thrilled to be talking about boundaries with you guys. So, what are boundaries and what are they for? So, I am just going to go into a very brief description of it. This is not a detailed explanation. This is more like just a casual fun explanation of it, because honestly my vision with this channel is to just have fun and so just feel free and express myself, and I hope that you guys will do the same thing. So to me, these are standards that you boundaries are standards that you set and you expect others, to respect them. That's how you're setting standards on how you want to be treated in a given relationship. They are generally supposed to lead to pleasant interactions, and your boundaries should help you live most interactions and situations feeling respected, empowered, valued, and that your opinion does actually matter. Because then when someone is not respecting your opinion, you go, you know what? I don't really feel respected in this interaction with you, or I feel so disempowered because I feel like I am communicating something and I am setting a boundary, but you are not respecting it. And I just wanted to ask you, is that the intention, and is that how you were intending to make me feel? Because that is how I feel. And so generally, that's why you have to actually sit down and think about what boundaries are, and then you have to set your boundaries. And then when you set your boundaries, you have to communicate them with to others in a lot of situations, so that when you're walking out of a situation or an interaction, you're like, if you felt that someone did not respect your boundary, you were prepared enough to just go, oh, I do not like how you're talking to me. Actually, I feel very disrespected right now, or I feel very disempowered because I have just said that I'd like something done, and for some reason it has not been done, and I don't have a very good explanation for why that is the case. So, who are you setting these boundaries against? It is your spouse, your friends, your family members, your co-workers, your community. And I know that generally when people are thinking about boundaries, we usually are thinking more about workspace, like boundaries, but it's so important to think about boundaries with your spouse and to think of them ahead of time, and your family members as well, because I feel like that those are the areas where people generally don't think about so much, but they are the most important ones, because you spend a lot of time with your family members, you spend a lot of time with your spouse, you are living in the same space as your spouse, you are sharing your finances with your spouse, you guys are sharing like food. So you go, that is one of the areas that, like, those are some of the areas that you really, really have to sit down and think about, because in a work situation, generally like there's universal standards, and someone else has already thought about what happens in this situation. But in the like in the case of your relationships with your spouse, with your friends, or with like someone that you totally love so much, the boundaries are not very clear. And those are the situations where you are most likely to get taken advantage of, because you're in a position where you go, you know what, I love this person so much, and sometimes when they do something that's just disrespectful, I don't even process it as that, because I am just thinking, you know what, I'm just happy to be here. I'm just happy to see him or her. But then now, because I did not set my boundaries, I did not know when to say, you know what, honey, I feel quite offended because I have just communicated and I feel like you have not listened to me. Or Betty, my friend, like, I love you so much and I love to spend time with you, but I feel like I am trying to change my usual routine, and I have told you that this really does matter to me, but I see that you are undermining my efforts. And I just wanted to ask you, is that the case, right? So it's little things like that that you have to pay attention to, so that you are actually like communicating with your friends, with your spouse in a respectful, calm way, and telling them your boundaries, and also like in the same respectful, calm way, telling them that you expect them to follow them. And like generally you go, it will take time for you to get used to this, because maybe this is something new, but you have to say that you expect them to actually like listen to your boundaries, otherwise they won't. So generally I go, why do you need boundaries? I go, honestly, for me, my simplest way to say it is because you need boundaries, because honestly, when you go to the playground, and I go because these days I'm always like it's still the playground even as adults. There is always that one or two or few kids who play a little too rough unless you check them and say, hey, I have boundaries and I feel quite disrespected right now, and I'd like you to adjust your attitude. I think that is, like one of the main reasons, because your boundaries are supposed to protect you from being taken advantage of, because you're going, you know what, I am here to have a good time, I am here to enjoy myself, and I don't want to turn this into an unpleasant situation, but I also don't want to be disrespected or feel disempowered. So I am just, like going, if at like at the moment that I feel like someone is disrespecting me because I thought of my boundaries ahead of time, I'm just like, hey, I feel like you're taking advantage of me, and I just wanted to clarify, okay? Maybe that's not the case, and usually for most people, they'll just go, oh my God, I didn't know that. I am so sorry that I'm making you feel that way. I will, I will try to work on that. It will be very rare for someone to just go, oh, I know that that is your boundary, but I don't respect it, right? So, because for most people, when they're crossing your boundaries, they're not doing it consciously. They are doing it unconsciously. And it's generally not like the intention is not to disrespect you. But still, you have felt disrespected and you have felt like someone has taken advantage of you, right? So that's why it's very important to think of this ahead of time, so that when you are communicating that boundary, you are starting from a point of, you're not assuming that this person was being malicious or trying to hurt you. You're just communicating and just going, you know what, honestly, I really like you, and I know that you are, like so far I have not had unpleasant exchanges with you, but today I feel like I feel like I did not like how you talked to me, right? And so you are giving the person the opportunity to explain themselves and just go, oh, actually, I am sorry you feel that way. That was not my intention. Maybe we should work on, making sure that this does not happen again. And you're like, yeah, I would absolutely love that, because I don't like to feel taken advantage of. So your boundaries are supposed to guide you and let you know when you need to walk out of a situation or interaction, because someone in that interaction or situation is either disrespecting you or maltreating you on a level that is unacceptable by universal standards or your own standards. So when I talk about universal standards, I am talking about a work situation, or maybe in your community. I feel like there are some things that you just go, for your work, there is generally a lot of universal standards. That is, for the most part, that most employees who are doing the same job, getting the same pay, should be treated pretty much the same. And I know that some people are, the boss best friend, and they will get, more favors. That is absolutely normal, right? But there is a standard that you just go, this is not acceptable, right? Like, this is not acceptable. So regardless, like whether you are the boss best friend or you're not, but then you also go, it's absolutely normal that if your boss or your manager has someone that is their favorite, they will treat them better, they will give them more shifts, or some of the best shifts, and that's okay. So that should not be a big deal, because people are allowed to have favorites, right? But it's just when it goes to a point where just going, I think my manager is singling me out and just being a little too much, and how either disrespectful they're being, or how they are cutting my shifts, and all those types of things, right? That you go, I think I'm going to talk to someone else maybe, and then I'm going to communicate this to him or her, right? And so usually I go for work, work situations. That's when I usually think about universal standards more. But in terms of relationships with your spouse or your friends or your family members, those are the ones where I just go, you absolutely must go with your own standards, because there is no universal standards for that, because your power relationship is absolutely different. So that could be, my husband is the provider. He has, he makes a whole lot more money than I make. So in a work situation, he would be my superior. But at home, the power relationship is different, because it's like, oh, I know that my husband out earns me, but quite a lot. But our power, like arrangement is pretty equal, and in some cases, I actually have more of a say in this house than he does. Right? So it's those things that you just go, and then when someone else tries to tell you their standard with their spouse, you go, well, you know what? That is great that is your standard with your spouse, but that is not my standard with my spouse. Me and my spouse, we have a different arrangement, and those are the times that you go, I'll go with my own standards. So that is why it is a great idea to think about your boundaries ahead of time, so that what passes for universal standards and what are just your own standards, right? So when you don't prepare yourself ahead of time, you get confused. And sometimes when you get confused, you end up lashing out or something like that, right? And then it ends up being, oh, so are you just being obnoxious, or like, are you actually setting and establishing a boundary, right? And so that is like, those are some of the things that you have to think about, and which is why you have to prepare ahead of time, because you're going, I want to make sure that my boundaries are respected and that they actually matter, right? And you have to make sure that you are thinking of them often, so that, and you're coming up with scenarios and picturing yourself establishing and implementing your boundaries. And you have to make them reasonable as well. Because when you don't make your boundaries reasonable, then, people either make you feel obnoxious, or you yourself end up feeling obnoxious because you're going, well, you know what? Maybe that was overkill. Maybe that was not a very well thought out boundary, right? But then again, I go, that depends on the relationship. Because for me, I go like in terms of your relationship with your family members and your spouse, because relationships vary. What seems like overkill to one person is exactly, like what works for another one, right? So and that's why you have to really think of things ahead of time. And I always stress, as much as possible, and I know that it's so difficult, because when you're angry, you're just like, I want to lash out. I want to express exactly how I feel, and I want to just, yell and all those types of things. But one of the most important things that you must do and remember, and try as much as possible, communicate as clearly and as calmly as you can. Because one of the things that people who are trying to disrespect you and cross your boundaries do is try to make you angry so that you can lash out and look crazy. And sometimes you're going, I don't even think that my spouse or my family member is doing this consciously, but then they are just doing it. And right now I'm just looking so angry, and I'm just looking all kinds of crazy, but I am not actually communicating why this is making me angry and making it make sense to this person. So that is why I'm really stressing that you set them, ahead of time, think of them ahead of time. And then you also have to go, how will I, follow through and make sure that the people around me are respecting the boundaries that I am setting, right? And so generally you have to go in most situations prepared. In some cases, you should be prepared to lose the relationship. You should be prepared to lose the job or the contract. Like, you should know ahead of time so that you're not surprised when, should, and if it does happen, right? Like, this way you're not going back on your word that you expect your boundaries to be respected, come rain or shine, right? Because sometimes you're like, I have just set a boundary with my spouse over and over and over and over, and it's just not, like, and it's a lot of boundaries, right? Because that's why people end up breaking up. Or I am in a work situation where I am communicating my feelings and expectations, but I just feel like, like my efforts are undermined. So those are the times that you think and go, well, maybe it's actually about time that I move on and apply for a job somewhere else, right? Or just start working on a different project. Or maybe I am going into this meeting and this is what I am expecting from my boss or my manager. And if these steps are not met, I am fine with losing this job, or I am fine with losing this contract, right? So those are practical steps that you're taking towards establishing your boundaries. And you're just going, I don't even, I do not want to be angry or lash out, but I am just saying, like, this is what I need for this to be working for me. And if it's not, I came here prepared to walk out of this situation and just say, I'm going to try something else. So, my friends, that is what I had prepared for you today. And I am hoping that you have learned something from that. I am just learning how to set my boundaries as well, so it's still something that I am working on. And I hope that this does help you in your journey to learning how to set boundaries and knowing why you should set them. And I was so thrilled to put this video together. I hope that you will enjoy it. I would love to hear some comments about what you guys think about it. And if you have any suggestions about how to, like how to make this even better, I would love to hear that. Leave a comment down below and have a lovely week.